Hey, my name is Paweł Jurdeczka. I'm a product owner on STX Next, as you probably know. And today I'll be talking about fixing a project for one of our clients. So, November 2014, first days in, I joined an ongoing project, and the situation at that time was pretty challenging. What do I mean by that? Is deadline pushed back 2 times, issues with quality, low team's morale, and the scale of the issues could be visualized by the predictability trend. So we are here, sprint 6. So on average, as a team, we were able to deliver 27% of planned features. What happened, here is what happened after 1 sprint, after another 2, and in the long term. So as you probably can see, the values are between the range of 80 and 100%, right? So what did we do? What happened here? Did we added 10 new developers to speed up development, or did we employ 10 consultants on our side, or did we outsource the work to the external team in India? So let me put it aside for a moment and address a couple of more questions that I asked myself recently. So, given that the issues that I saw at the very beginning were the same that I saw in my previous projects or the projects of my colleagues, so is there a pattern in fixing these kind of projects? And if the answer is yes, what is the leverage? So what is the more important thing? Because in these kind of projects, you don't have time to improve everything, of course. There are some limitations, some constraints. So how to achieve the greatest results with the minimum effort? This was a really important question for me. So as the first question is pretty simple, because I wouldn't be here probably giving the talk if the answer wouldn't be yes. So the second one is more complex. So I need to step back and focus for a moment on the process. So if we think about agile software development and sprints, this could be visualized in this graph, in these graphics. So something goes in, the magic happens here, right? And we've got a potentially shippable product at the end. So what is important here is the energy that moves the flywheel. So you want to start with the greater momentum. If you slow down at the very beginning, then you've got troubles, right? And it will be really hard to improve here. So what I'm trying to say that the improvements done here, there are really some kind of limitations for improvements done here, which are done here, because if you slow down at the very beginning, it's really hard to speed up. So what is the energy that comes in and moves the flywheel? This could be called a features list, right? A requirements. So how to pass them in an accessible manner, what to do to speed up, to start with the greater momentum. Well, I'll show you a couple of techniques and practices that we have applied and are like easy to apply, but this is like low level. But on the top level, what you need is just one thing. You need to start to think about people. So meet people who do the work, meet people from the Scrum team. I mean here people from from Helium, Kryptonite, and Aluminium team. And of course, you have to think, so this is the people who do the work. And you have to think about people who use the product. Meet Laura, she uses our product. She's the employee of the bank, she's legal, and she uses our product on a daily basis. So let me put it aside for a moment. I'll get back to it. But it's really the most important thing that I want to convey today. So what did we do on a daily basis? Right? What were the actions? So a couple of small things here. We split requirements. We asked the right questions. We started to draw and use the print screen button. So we uploaded screenshots to requirements. And we started to use a stopwatch and moderate our discussions. Pretty simple, right? And to perform all of that, we needed some kind of container, right? We needed time. And there's a specific term to name this time in Agile, and we call it backlog refinement. So how in terms of the backlog refinement, how the situation looked like at the very beginning when we were in the sprint 6, right? And when we had troubles with delivery. Well, this is how it was. So complete emptiness. There was no backlog refinement at all. So what we had, of course, sprints, right? So a regular sprint means you plan the work, you do the work, and then you show the work and you deliver, right? But we didn't have the planning. We had something called planment, so a backlog refinement plus planning. So this was the first time that the team saw the features that were asked to deliver in this sprint. Of course, you can imagine how it affected the delivery, right? There was no time to ask the right questions, or not enough time, I would say, or not enough time to understand the scope, because they were pretty vague at that time. If you got a limit, if you don't have enough time, you will be tense. You won't be thinking about everything. And to be specific here, we're talking in this case about 3-week sprints. So we had just 1 hour to plan all that stuff. Pretty insane. So usually we ended up like that. We agreed, of course, but we were thinking about different stuff. How did we resolve that? Well, we started something called continuous backlog refinement. So this is a pretty simple fix, right? So before the sprint, we've tried to organize several smaller backlog refinement sessions, and they lasted usually 1 hour. Of course, there was an agenda before that, so we knew upfront what we will be talking about. Is a fix, right? Splitting stories, splitting requirements, pretty interesting. So I don't know how you estimate the requirements in your project, but basically, if you use story points and Fibonacci, you probably know that 40 story points is way too big. There is 1, 3, 5, 8, 21, 13, and 21 before that. So 40 story points could be like 100, could be 200, could be anything. So what did we do here? It wasn't about just know-how and how do we do that. It was about changing the mindset. Because of course, what I heard and what I heard from the team was that it is unsplittable, of course. You cannot split it, man. But imagine how it was hard for me to negotiate with them, because I'm just a business product owner. It's hard for me to come up with some arguments if I don't know the tech stuff so well as they. So we were talking here about changing the mindset. And the myth has been dispelled, because we organized 2-hour workshops, 1 hour of theory and 1 hour of practice. And you know what? It was possible to split. I don't know how it worked, but it may happen in your projects also. So what we started to do, we started to deliver stuff iteratively, of course, because we had the tool in our hands. And what is on a really low level, maybe you will find it interesting. The most popular strategies were the following. So actions perspective. So for instance, as Laura I want to manage, and this was split into several small actions, like stories like as Laura I want to add, right, or edit or delete. And the second most popular was about the user perspective. So in the first iteration, we delivered a particular feature, for instance, for all of the users, then only for particular users, like campaign managers in our case, and then campaign managers plus users from a particular departments or locations. Asking the right questions. What do I mean by that? Are questions really important? Well, if we look on the requirements and we don't ask the right question, this is what we see. So we needed to sharpen the image. We needed to make it really clear what we are talking about. And this is pretty easy. You just need to ask the right questions, like where the feature should be implemented, who should have access to it, or for whom we are designing this feature, how it should work, and my favorite, why do we need this feature? Because maybe there's something cheaper that you can come up with. And I don't need to spend all that money, right? So answering all of those was really important. And this is also a simple technique that we've got in Scrum. It's called definition of ready, right? So a checklist, all of the details that has to be specified before we start to work and start to take it into the sprint. A couple of examples here. This is a screenshot for the backlog. here you got the one-liner saying what it's all about and a bunch of acceptance criteria, right? So this is how it was when we were in sprint 6. This is how it was after the change. A one-liner saying, okay, so I'll go into some kind of details here. So notification sent to approver, so just a user who approves something. Then the user story in the reverse format, have a look. In order to be kept up to date as LoRa, so we know for whom we are designing the feature, I want to be notified. So at the very beginning, we've got really important information why we need this feature, because maybe you can come up with something cheaper, right? And for whom we are designing, and of course, what are we talking about here? And then comes in the business context. So some detailed information why we think we need this feature. And what was next? So for whom we are designing, as I told you about, this is LoRa. And this is a screenshot from Jira. So if you click the thumbnail, you can see the persona. So the artificially created representative of the end user segment. And we know that LoRa want to protect the interests of the bank and want to enforce adherence to regulations to reduce the risks of fines. So now we know why she really uses the system. We know that she wants to spend minimum time in the system, right? And of course, where the feature should be implemented, and some examples saying, okay, so these are the steps that we should take into consideration, and acceptance criteria. So a little bit of details here. How will we know that we achieved the goal? I told you about the screenshots, right, and about drawings. And probably you think it might be like just fancy stuff to do, right? Whiteboard, drawings, right? This kind of stuff, those agile crazy people do it. So, because, yeah, it's cool to do, right? But there is the reason behind that. So have a look. This is the requirement, right? Local budget and local currency field should be contained in a budget information group. Are you ready to say me something about that? Is it clear for you now? What's this supposed to be done here? Yes, no? No? Okay. This is the quite simple graph, right? Oh, I know it's ugly as mine, but but I hope it's informative, right? So local budget, local currency, and total budget USD. How simple is that? Oh, have a look. This is the screenshot, right? Okay, annotation tool, Jing, by the way. So local budget, local currency. Okay, now I think I know something more about it. But this is just simple example. Have a look on the more complex one. How long will you need to process this data, right? I don't ask about reading the data, but just understanding the data. So this is the outcome of one of the refinement sessions that we end up with in our team. This is how the team interpreted those requirements. Here you go, just 3 scenarios. So one is just, I mean, of course, it's self-explanatory for the team. I know you won't get it probably, but this is one scenario, second scenario, and the third scenario. And I made a mistake, so it was updated in Photoshop. But basically, this is pretty simple, right, for the team. And what about even more complex ones? This is how it could be translated. This is a list of scenarios. I will zoom in a second. So basically saying, okay, I'll take one row and zoom in, okay? So if something happens, whatever it is, and some conditions are true, right, then display something. How simple is that? Probably a way simpler than the text written on the page. Stopwatch, time boxing and moderating our discussions. So this is like simple one. If we have 6 requirements to refine and we have 1 hour, so it was like 10-minute time box. I won't go into too much details, as simple as it is, right? So if we look on all of those techniques, so is there something that they've got in common? What's the common ground here? Are there random techniques, or is it something important behind them? Because I'm not here to tell you about some like 5 techniques saying, okay, this will heal all that issues in your project. This will resolve all of the issues in all of the projects, no matter what is the context of the project. I'm here to tell you something more. So to understand why they work, so that you can come up with some enhancements, or you can come up with different solutions. or better techniques, right? So what we see here is the practice. So is the tip of the iceberg. These are the practices. But now is the more important thing is just saying what's the reason why they work. So they work because they take into consideration people. And what do you mean by that? I mean, of course, again, people who do the work and people who use the product. So just to be very specific here, I told you about drawing and about providing some screenshots. So why do they work? Because they are hardwired to our brains. This is what I'm talking about. We as humans are both biologically wired to process the world visually. It's not about creating some fancy visuals. It's about taking into consideration how we as humans operate. It's not about our will or preference that we like some visuals and that the interest is really like popular now, right? It's about how we, on a biological level, how we work as humans. And you don't have to believe me. Just we'll do a quick experiment here, okay? Are you ready? Or sleeping a bit? Okay. I need your help, by the way. So on the next slide, I'll display some requirements. Pretty easy, like 3-4 lines. And so tell me when you process the data, okay? Right? Okay, here you go. It won't be hard. I'm waiting. Have you got it? Okay, we've got it. So a couple of seconds, right? More or less. Okay, so now a couple of more slides. And please say it out loud next if you are ready to move on, okay? So whenever you will feel that you got it, just say next, okay? Okay? Okay, thanks. I thought I'm alone here. Okay, so ready, steady, go. Oh, you did a good job. So what happened here, right? So imagine how fast you were able to comprehend all of this data. Why? Because 70% of our sensors are in our eyes, and it's not about me talking about it. There's a literature for that. And the literature is called Gestalt, Principles of Perception. You can Google it if you don't know it. It's really important. So our brain is hardwired to understand all of the correlation between objects. And what we've got here, we've got orientation, we've got color, we've got size, and we've got shape. Is done on our biological level. It's not something about our preference. So if we if we have it all in our minds, then all the visuals make sense, right? So what was next? Stopwatch, right? Why did it work? Because as you probably know, when you start to do the task, the work expands, right, according to Parkinson's law. So it fills up the time box. I don't know, have you ever tried to pass some exams, but probably you know that no matter how much time you've got, you'll be busy it will take you you'll have some 1 second free time before the exam, right? So if we know how we operate as humans, as people, right? So we probably know that using the stopwatch is really important. What was next? Questions, the right questions. What do I mean by that, and what's behind those questions? Why do they work? It's about cognitive filters, so our psychology. What I mean by cognitive filters is something that which our brain does. So you cannot process all of the data, right? The data is filtered out, so we can focus only on limited data. So only limited data is processed by your consciousness. So just to give you an example, so I don't know, I was recently trying to buy a car, and I had a test drive with a Chevrolet. It is not a popular car in Poland, but after doing it, I see Chevrolet everywhere, right? These are crap, by the way. So what do you mean by, so what is the context here in terms of the projects? So we've got you developers, right? Skilled professionalists, but you're focused on the tech side. I mean, most of you probably, because this is your area of expertise, and this is understandable. So, but what we want here, we want to deliver winning products. We need to focus on people, right? So that's why we ask questions to start to feel how the users will interact with our product. Because you're not here, I mean, developers, this is what I believe, you're not here to write code, this is the effect of your work, but we are here to design products, and winning products. Because if the LoRa, or if the LoRa's boss, or the end user boss wouldn't pay, I wouldn't be here, right? And you wouldn't have a job. So you are designers, whether you think about it in this way or not. So this is why cognitive questions, or like providing those personas, so LoRa here, right? This is really important because it's more tangible. You start to think with empathy, hopefully, of course. This is why cognitive questions, important questions, are really important. So, is there a pattern in fixing these kind of projects? Right? I believe yes. And the answer is to focus on the input, so passing the requirements, right? And to doing it in some kind of accessible manner. And what I mean by that is that the leverage here, so the highest benefits are when you think about people and how do we operate on a biological level and on the psychological level. So last point from my side here. So why, if we, it's pretty simple, right? It's the simple techniques here. So why don't we do that, right? If this is so simple, why don't we do that? So I think there are two reasons. One is just you developers, and I can understand why, of course, you consider meetings as a useless thing, right? I don't know if this is true for all of you, but this is what I heard. And of course, people who manage or who are like business people also usually want to pay for just coding, right? But if the more we focus on people, and the more we focus on applying the right techniques, the greater results we have. And this was, I hope, visualized by the predictability trend that I saw you, that I presented to you at the very beginning. So the underlying principle for me is to focus on people. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for the discussion. Who wants to enter?
So of course there must be a balance between time spent on meetings and actually coding for developers. I'm speaking as a developer here, so be prepared. Yeah, so my question is, we have to think about the people, especially people that are using the product. And my question is, who exactly or if developers, how much time should, for example, developers spend on talking to the people that actually use the product, or should that be, who should do that work to talk with the people, with the users?
Okay, so the more, I would say that the principle here is like the more context we have in the team, the better understanding is. It might be done by the product owner, of course. So he might visit the end users, or there might be some researches, but there might be, of course, some calls with the end users or the representatives of the end users. So what we had in this project is that like we had those monthly calls with the representatives of the end users. But of course, it doesn't mean that you developers have to spend like 70% of time like talking with the end users. But there are several techniques that might help you. So like persona, so LoRa it is not a real person. Is something so created just for the sake of understanding who's using the product. This is the UX technique. So I don't know like how deep we want to go, but basically it all depends on the project. I would say that I was in the project before when we had those qualitative research And we with all of the team members, we were behind the window observing people testing the product. This was how it was in my previous job, right? But here it's more about like specifying personas, like more about product owners saying who's actually using the product, maybe visiting the end users. So, but I think it's pretty important to say that we are not talking here about end users, because end users, I don't know, this is the problem of end users that are intangible. So have you ever seen an end user? You probably saw Laura using the product or people using the product. So this is what I'm talking about shifting the approach. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.